Okay, this is part 2 of my first Q&A, and if you missed the first part, I'm going to put a link to it in the description. Without further ado, we'll jump back in. Thoughts on 5-string versus 4-string? Really, man, people have been arguing about that for decades now. I can't tell you which one's better. You will notice all of my basses are 4-string basses, so it's pretty clear what I prefer. I have owned and played 5-string basses. They do have some really cool advantages. The main ones being, the obvious is you have access to more notes. You have notes below the standard E. You can get down to the D or the C down there, which can be really helpful depending on the style of music that you play. I think one style of music that's really helpful to have a 5-string is playing gospel bass. Like a lot of those traditional gospel songs or more modern gospel songs, a lot of them are in A flat, B flat, or E flat. And that comes from the piano, right? The way the chords are voiced on the piano determines what key the song is in. So that music in that tradition, a lot of those songs have those keys, which having access to those low notes is really helpful. And I have had the privilege of playing gospel music in the past at different churches, and it's been an incredible experience. I will say having a 5-string is really helpful in those contexts and some other musical contexts. So access to notes is one. The other is positioning. There's some strategic advantages to having a 5 or 6-string bass. So instead of having to move up and down the neck laterally, you can move up and down the neck vertically. So that can enable you to play different musical ideas without ever moving your hand. So there's economy of motion there. So those are some of the main advantages of the 5-string as opposed to the 4-string. The 4-string, I like the 4-string because I personally don't tend to like the sound of those notes below a standard E. Just sonically, it's not my favorite sound. If I'm playing it on a synth bass, that's different. But if on an electric bass, I think those notes can sort of start to sound floppy and not super confident. If that makes sense, it's just a personal choice. So I don't really like the way the notes sound that low in general. And I also, there's an aesthetic thing. I just like the way 4-strings look. And the biggest thing is the width of the neck. When you have a 5 or a 6-string bass, you can have a huge neck, and it can be taxing to play. So I find the 4-string neck comfortable, and it just feels right to me. If you play 5-string or 6-string or whatever string, I think that's really cool. And I'm not going to tell you to not do that. So I think what you have to do as a musician is try different things, find out what feels the best to you and what inspires you the most, and then just go with that. And for me, it's 4-string, but for you, it might be something else. So I hope you find the sound you're looking for. What is a project you are most proud to have been a part of? A few things come to mind. I would say this past year, Backstage Live in Deacon Night was so much fun in a really dark time for so many people. We were able to play for hundreds of thousands of people through the internet. That was really cool, and we made a really cool band out of it. Really proud of that. Really excited to see what happens with that. Very proud to play in Good Trouble with Noah Guthrie. We've done some really awesome shows through the years and arranged a lot of cool music, and I feel like I've had a good hand in arranging a lot of that music. I'm very proud of that. A lot of great memories. And then personally, I'm really proud to have created Kudzu Hill, which is a project that I made. Basically, I wrote a science fiction short story and then scored it with the help of some very talented friends. So if you're interested in that, I will put the link in the description. It's a little different, but I'm really proud of that. And nowadays, I'm really excited about starting this YouTube channel. So Yeah, proud of all those things for different reasons. What has been the most unexpected sound you have captured and loved? There was a time, so when Shay and I were in Japan a few years ago, we were on Yakushima Island, and there's this little beach where there was these big rocks in the water, and the tide was coming in and out of these rocks, and there was this cool sound that was happening where the water was flowing through these rocks and this little tunnel, and the water was getting caught in there and forcing the air out, and it was this really cool sound. Um, but what's funny is I was like reaching down to record this sound, and little did I know there was a huge wave coming in, and when you hear the recording, you'll hear the sound happen, and then you hear the splash, and then you hear Shay just laughing at me, and that was one of those hilarious, unexpected moments. But I always like to carry a little stereo recorder with me when I'm traveling, because you never know what sort of sounds you're going to capture, and it's a fun way. A lot of people take pictures. I like to take sound pictures, so I always take this recorder with me, capture whatever weird sound I encounter on the road. Do you prefer your Mustang Tone, or did you make the switch just based on feel? I made the switch because I hurt my hand really bad a few years ago, and playing the Mustang was more comfortable for me. But then, so it was sort of out of necessity, but I ended up falling in love with the sound. So even despite that injury, if that had never happened, I think I might not have tried the Mustang, but I think now that I have tried it, I love it just for its sound on its own. So the Mustang is a very cool sound in my opinion. I actually have a video about why I think short scale basses are cool, and I'll put the link in the description. Thoughts on hybrid amps and touring with them versus a full tube amp or solid state amp? Good question. I've done all of the above. I will say currently I'm touring with a sort of hybrid amp, and I like that. I think that's a nice compromise. If you're not familiar with this concept, so if you're going full tube on the road, they're very heavy. They can break, they can fail out on the road, but they sound awesome. So what you have to decide is the inconvenience worth the tone? But I also think it's worth noting that the people out front might not actually be hearing the tone of the amp. They might be hearing your direct box. So is it worth it? I think it really depends on the tour. It depends on where you're going, what sort of venues you're playing, and if you're carrying it. But I think tube amps are awesome. But I'll say I'm not touring with the tube amp right now. I'm wanting to get my first bass. Would you recommend a full size or a short scale one? Really good question. I think it depends on your goals. If you are trying to become a bass player, I think it would be wise to learn the full scale bass. In the long run, you're going to have a lot more tone options, and you'll be able to play some classic sounding instruments. Be very valuable to be able to do that. If you are a guitar player that is just kind of wants to have a bass to mess around with or do a little recording with, there's nothing wrong with just having a short scale bass and not having a full scale bass. So yeah, I think it just depends on your goals. But I will say, if you only play short scale basses, you are going to have limited tone options. But if that's okay with you, then just play short scale bass. That's fine. Nobody cares. And if they care, it doesn't matter. Advice for a 13-year-old who chose the bass as his main instrument. Well, first off, you're way ahead of the game because you already figured out that the bass is the coolest instrument at the age of 13. You're way ahead of the game. A lot of people are coming to the bass years later and realizing that. So you already have got a great start. I'm excited for you. Yeah, I think a lot of people want to play guitar, or drums, or sing. There's not as many people that are serious about the bass. And because of that, it could open up some really cool opportunities for you if you focus on it. So there's a lot of things I could say, but I think I would say just try and hold on to the pure love of music and the fun of music. And take it seriously, but not too seriously. And it's going to go great. So I'm excited for you. I'm excited to maybe hear you one day, and I wish you all the best of luck. What made you decide to start a YouTube channel? It's been cool to see some of my friends, their journeys with YouTube. I remember 3 or 4 years ago, New Year's Eve, we're sitting down talking about the next year. It was Rhett and his wife and Shay and myself. And I remember Rhett being like, I think I'm going to try and do YouTube this year. And I didn't even know what that really meant. And seeing his journey. And then also I used to intern for Rick. Rhett and I were both Rick's studio interns, and before Rick started YouTube. And I've seen his journey. And you know, I've been thinking about it for a while, but the timing just has never been right. And I think right now the timing is right. So I'm just excited to see what happens. I don't know everything, but what I do know, I'm hoping can be helpful for you. So yeah, I'm just excited to share and to see what happens. Favorite DI to use? I really, really liked my Ready. I regret selling it. That thing sounded great. It was also really big and heavy and bulky. Nowadays, I also really like Radial's JDI. That's a great direct box. But I'm hoping to do like a direct box video soon, like talking about the pros and cons of different direct boxes, and you know what makes one of them cost $100 versus one of them costing $1,000. And I think that might be a cool video. So let me know if you're interested in that, and hopefully I can make that soon. Tips on setting EQ to fit in a mix in a live band situation. It's a really good question. I think it depends. If you have a front of house engineer that has subwoofers and a full PA system, I tend to not do a ton of EQing on my sound because I like to give them space to work. If you are, let's say you don't have subs and you have a limited PA and your bass amp is providing most of the low end information in the space, then I'll be a little more aggressive with the EQ. And there's no hard and fast rule. It really depends on the room and how the room is resonating. But I will say I tend to do more subtractive EQ. So instead of adding frequencies, I'm cutting frequencies. A lot of times in the low mids, where it can get boomy, you can get a lot of frequency buildup. So sometimes I'll cut the lows or the low mids or use a shelf. Or if you need a little more clarity to sit in the mix, I will add a little bit around 2 to 4K. But I think if your bass is too boomy, which is oftentimes the problem, where you're not hearing the note but you're feeling like an unpleasant sort of woofy sound, I would probably pull something out of the low mids, and which frequency that is just depends on the space. So you're just gonna have to trust your ears and listen for it. I will say something that's really helpful is to get a good equalizer on your phone. I have an app called the FFT Plot app, which is a very accurate equalizer. So what I'll do is I can listen for buildup in the mix and or use the app to see the specific frequency, and then you can notch out a problem frequency depending on your amplifier's EQ configuration. Sometimes you can't do a super narrow band, but at least you can know where the buildup is, and you can try and EQ around that. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, you just have to trust your ears. But helpful tips being, don't do too much, but if you do have to do something, cut more than add. I got so many more questions than these submitted. I cannot get to them all. I'm sorry if I did not get to your question. Thank you so much for asking them. This is really cool, actually. I don't know who all's out there. I don't know who all is interested or cares in what I have to say, but clearly there's some people that are here that are asking awesome questions. We're learning together. This is what it's all about for me. So I just want to thank you so much for being here and for being a part of the channel. and I'm excited to make more videos for you soon.